The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by any species. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive sphere of metal and crystal that could hold millions of beings at once. For 12,000 years, the representatives of 847 different alien species had gathered here to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. They had prevented wars, shared technologies, and kept peace across 1,000 worlds. Today, they gathered to discuss a problem. A small problem, really. A tiny blue planet called Earth. Ambassador HFY stood at the center of the speaking platform. His body was made of living crystal, and light passed through him in beautiful patterns when he moved. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had seen many debates in this hall, but never one quite like this. "Fellow delegates," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. 3 cycles ago, our sensor stations detected an object crossing the boundary veil. It was a probe, crude and primitive, powered by technology we abandoned thousands of years ago. But it carried something that concerns us deeply. He waved one crystalline limb, and a hologram appeared above him. It showed a small spacecraft, ugly and asymmetrical, covered in golden panels and strange markings. This probe came from a world in the outer regions, a planet called Earth, home to a species called humans. They number only 8 billion. They have only recently discovered faster than light travel. By all measures, they are primitive. A ripple of amusement passed through the assembly. 8 billion was nothing. The Concord governed trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. What threat could such a small species pose? HFY raised his limb for silence. I thought the same, honored delegates. Then I examined the probe's memory banks. I found their history. I found their wars. The hologram changed. Now it showed images that made even the most hardened delegates uncomfortable. Cities burning, weapons that split atoms apart, soldiers killing soldiers, bodies piled in ditches, gas chambers, nuclear explosions, a species at war with itself, again and again, for thousands of years without stopping. They have not known a single generation of peace, HFY continued. They created weapons capable of destroying their entire world, and they used them on each other. They killed millions of their own kind in conflicts over land, resources, and ideas. They are, by any definition, the most violent species we have ever encountered. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted in 100 different languages. Some demanded more information. Others called for immediate action. A few simply sat in shocked silence, watching the images of human violence play across the hologram. High Arbiter Yul Soma rose from her seat at the center of the council platform. She was ancient beyond measure, her body a mass of writhing tentacles covered in bioluminescent spots that pulsed with her emotions. As leader of the Concord, her word carried immense weight. "Silence," she commanded, and the chamber obeyed. "Ambassador HFY speaks truth. I have reviewed the data myself. The humans are dangerous. The question before us is simple. What do we do about them?" The debate that followed lasted 40 cycles. Delegates argued, presented evidence, formed alliances, and broke them again. Several proposals emerged. The Tressi Collective, a hive mind species of insectoid beings, proposed the simplest solution. Destroy the probe, their speaker buzzed. Destroy their satellites. Destroy any evidence they exist. Pretend this meeting never happened. Let them kill themselves in isolation. Others found this too cruel. The Volanthi, a species of gentle giants who had not fought a war in 6,000 years, suggested a different approach. "We should teach them," their representative rumbled. "Send teachers and philosophers. Show them a better way. You would give them our technology?" HFY asked sharply. "You saw what they did with atomic power. Imagine what they would do with plasma weapons, with gravity manipulation, with faster-than-light travel that actually works. The Volanthi representative had no answer. More proposals came and went. Quarantine, observation, slow integration over thousands of years. Each one had problems. Each one had risks. The humans were expanding quickly for such a young species. Soon they would encounter Concord territory. Soon they would learn they were not alone. Finally, High Arbiter Yulsilma spoke again. I have listened to all arguments. I have considered all options. And I believe there is only one path that ensures safety for both the Concord and for the humans themselves. She paused, her bioluminescent spots pulsing slowly. We must subjugate them. Not destroy them, but control them. We will place their world under Concord authority. We will manage their development. We will prevent them from harming themselves or others. It is the merciful choice. The chamber fell silent. Subjugation was rare. It was reserved for species that posed existential threats to the galaxy. It had not been done in 3,000 years. Consider the alternative, Yulsoma continued. We leave them alone, and in a century, they spread across a dozen worlds. They bring their wars with them. They encounter our peoples. They do to us what they have done to themselves. Can we risk that? Can we risk the safety of trillions for the freedom of 8 billion? One by one, the delegates began to signal their agreement. The Dominion hegemony voted yes. The Tressi Collective, disappointed that destruction was off the table, voted yes. The Volanthi hesitated longest, but eventually they too raised their consent. The vote was unanimous. All 847 species. Not a single voice spoke against it. Then it is decided, Yulsoma announced. We will assemble a fleet. We will travel to Earth. We will inform the humans of their new status. And we will ensure they never threaten the peace of this galaxy. She turned to face the hologram of Earth, a small blue dot in the vastness of space. This is not punishment, she said. This is mercy. One day, they will thank us. The Mercy Armada took 6 months to assemble. 30,000 warships from 100 different civilizations gathered at the staging point. It was the largest fleet in galactic history, carrying enough firepower to crack planets open like eggs. Surely, the delegates thought, the humans would see this force and surrender immediately. Surely, there would be no need for violence. The Armada jumped to Earth on a Tuesday morning. They arrived in perfect formation, their ships blocking out the sun, casting shadows across continents. They broadcast their demands in every human language. Surrender unconditionally, accept Concord governance, and no harm would come to them. They expected fear. They expected submission. They expected gratitude, eventually. They had no idea what they had started. The invasion lasted 72 hours. It was not a war. It was an execution. Human militaries had been preparing for alien contact for decades. They had plans, protocols, and weapons designed to fight invaders from space. None of it mattered. The Concord fleet fired plasma beams from orbit that turned military bases into glass. Suppression fields disabled every electronic device on the planet. Fighter jets fell from the sky. Tanks became useless metal boxes. Nuclear missiles sat dead in their silos. Their guidance systems fried beyond repair. Governments surrendered one by one. The United States lasted 18 hours. China lasted 24. Russia held out for 36 hours before their president finally accepted that resistance was impossible. The smaller nations followed quickly after that dot. By the end of the third day, Earth belonged to the Galactic Concord. The occupation began immediately. Alien governors arrived to manage each region of the planet. They were efficient and organized. dividing Earth into 12 administrative zones. Human governments were dissolved. Human militaries were disbanded. Human weapons were collected and destroyed. The aliens called their new territory a protectorate world. They said the word with pride, as if they were doing humanity a great favor. In their minds, they were saving a troubled species from itself. They expected gratitude. They received silence. Governor Thiessen was assigned to the North American Administrative Zone. He was a Kalari, a species of tall, thin beings with gray skin and large black eyes. His people were known for their administrative skills and their complete lack of imagination. He was, by all accounts, the perfect choice for managing a conquered population. His first report to the Concord was optimistic. "The humans have accepted their situation," he wrote. "There is some unrest, but nothing our security forces cannot handle. Integration is proceeding on schedule." Integration was the official term for what happened in the camps. The Concord had built dozens of facilities across the planet, places where humans were taken to learn their new place in the galaxy. They learned that their history was shameful. They learned that their wars were proof of their inferiority. They learned that the Concord knew best, that obedience was the path to a better future. Many humans emerged from these camps broken and submissive. They nodded when aliens spoke. They followed orders without question. They told their children that the old ways were wrong, that humanity had been saved from itself. But not all of them. Marcus Chun was 43 years old when the invasion happened. He had been an engineer before, designing power plants for a company that no longer existed. Now he worked in a factory to produce components for alien machines. He did not know what the components did. He was not allowed to ask. Every day, Marcus walked past alien guards on his way to work. Every day, he smiled and nodded and said nothing suspicious. Every day, he watched and learned. He noticed that the guards changed shifts at the same time each day. He noticed that the patrol vehicles followed the same routes. He noticed that the aliens talked freely in front of humans, assuming they were too primitive to understand advanced technology. They were wrong. Marcus had been meeting with others like him for 3 years. They gathered in basements and abandoned buildings, always moving, never staying in one place too long. They called themselves the Network, though they had no official name. They had no leaders, no hierarchy, nothing the aliens could identify and destroy. What they had was patience. "We cannot fight them directly," Marcus told his group one night. "Their weapons are too powerful. Their shields are too strong. But weapons and shields need power. They need communication. They need coordination. Take those away, and they become vulnerable." The group spent years studying captured alien technology. It was difficult work. The devices were designed for beings with different bodies and different minds. Many experiments failed. Some people died. But slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand. They learned how the suppression fields worked and how to disrupt them. They learned how the communication systems connected and how to break those connections. They learned how to turn the aliens' own technology against them. And they learned something else, something the aliens had never expected. They learned how to build ships. Deep beneath the Gobi Desert, in tunnels that had once held military bunkers, human engineers worked on their greatest project. They had captured alien vessels during the invasion, small craft that had crashed or been abandoned. They took these ships apart and put them back together, combining alien systems with human designs. The result was ugly. The ships had no elegance, no symmetry, no beauty. They looked like nightmares made of metal. But they flew, and they carried weapons that could hurt even Concord warships. 5 years passed. The aliens grew comfortable. They reduced their military presence, confident that humanity had been tamed. Governor Thiessen sent report after report praising the success of the integration program. The humans have fully accepted their place, his final report read. Resistance movements are fragmented and ineffective. I recommend reducing military presence by 40%. This world no longer requires heavy occupation. The report was sent on a Monday evening. By Tuesday morning, everything had changed. Marcus Chun stood in a hidden bunker beneath Chicago, surrounded by screens showing military positions across the globe. Around him, dozens of technicians waited at their stations. Similar bunkers existed on every continent, all connected by communication systems the aliens had never detected. Status report, Marcus said. All teams in position, came the reply. Awaiting your order. Marcus looked at the screens. He thought about the last 5 years. He thought about the integration camps. He thought about his daughter, who had been taken to one of those camps and had come back as a stranger. He thought about every humiliation, every injustice, every moment of powerless rage. Begin, he said. Across the planet, in perfect synchronization, the uprising began. The first explosions were electromagnetic pulses designed to disrupt alien electronics. Power grids flickered and died. Communication networks went silent. Suppression fields that had kept humanity helpless for 5 years suddenly stopped working. And then came the humans. They emerged from everywhere at once. They attacked with weapons the aliens had never seen before. They fought with a fury that no species in the Concord had ever encountered. They had waited 5 years for this moment, and they would not be stopped. The Concord had thought they understood human violence. They had studied humanity's wars, cataloged their atrocities, classified them as a dangerous but manageable species. They had understood nothing. This was not violence. This was vengeance. And it was only the beginning. Governor Thiessen was eating his morning meal when the lights went out. For a moment, he thought it was a simple power failure. Then his personal shield flickered and died. Then his communication device went silent. Then he heard the explosions. He ran to the window of his administrative tower and looked out over the city of Chicago. Fires burned in a dozen places. Alien patrol vehicles lay overturned in the streets. And everywhere, humans were moving with purpose and coordination that should have been impossible. This cannot be happening, he whispered. But it was. The uprising spread across the planet like wildfire. In North America, resistance fires attacked every alien installation simultaneously. In Europe, underground cells emerged from hiding to seize communication centers. In Asia, human engineers activated the ships they had been building in secret for years. In Africa, in South America, and Australia, the story was the same. Humanity rose as one. The aliens were completely unprepared. Their suppression fields were offline. Their communications were jammed. Their commanders could not coordinate their forces because they could not talk to each other. Individual units fought bravely, but without organization, they were overwhelmed. And then the ships arrived. They rose from hidden bases around the world, ugly hybrid vessels that combined alien technology with human engineering. They were faster than anything the occupation forces had expected. They were armed with weapons that could punch through Concord shields. And they were piloted by humans who had grown up dreaming of this moment. Captain Sarah Okonkwo was 28 years old. Her mother had died in an integration camp when Sarah was 12. Her father had been executed for possessing forbidden technology when she was 15. She had joined the resistance at 16 and had been training for this day ever since. Her ship, the Defiance, was the lead vessel of the Earth Liberation Fleet. It was not a beautiful ship. Its hull was patched with different metals. Its engines were a combination of 3 different alien designs. But Sarah loved it more than anything she had ever owned. All ships form up, she ordered. Target the orbital platforms first. Without those, they cannot call for reinforcements. The fleet rose through the atmosphere and into space. The Concorde had left only a skeleton force in orbit, confident that Earth was pacified. Those ships now faced a nightmare they had never imagined. Human pilots fought differently than any species the Concorde had encountered. They took risks that seemed insane. They pushed their ships beyond safe limits. They used tactics that should have gotten them killed but somehow worked. They fought not just to win, but to destroy. The orbital battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every Concorde ship around Earth was either destroyed or captured. The orbital platforms that controlled the suppression fields were burning wreckage. For the first time in 5 years, Earth's sky belonged to humanity again. But Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The Concorde will send more ships, she told her crew. They have 30,000 warships. We have 200. If we stay here and wait for them, we will die. A tactical officer, a young man named James, who had lost his entire family in the invasion, looked at her with fierce determination. Then we do not wait. We take the fight to them. It was a bold plan. Most people would have called it suicide. But humans had always been good at doing impossible things. The Earth Liberation Fleet jumped to the Proxima Centauri relay station 3 days later. The station was a critical point in the Concorde communication network. Whoever controlled it controlled all information moving through this sector of the galaxy. The Concorde defenders were not expecting an attack. They were not expecting anything. The idea that a newly freed species would immediately go on the offensive was so absurd that no one had planned for it. Sarah's fleet hit them hard and fast. Human ships swarmed the station's defenses, overwhelming them with speed and numbers. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. When it ended, the relay station belonged to humanity. More importantly, humanity now controlled the flow of information. They could see Concorde communications. They could intercept orders. They could even send false messages to confuse their enemies. Sarah sent the first transmission herself. It was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language used by the Concorde. It was simple and direct. To the Galactic Concorde. 5 years ago, you came to our world. You voted, all 847 of you, to subjugate our species. You called it mercy. You called it protection. You told yourselves you were saving us. She paused, letting the words sink in. We remember. We remember every vote. We remember every species that raised their voice against us. We remember every camp, every death, every humiliation. And now we are coming. The message ended with a list. All 847 species. All 847 votes. Every single one recorded and preserved. You voted unanimously, Sarah continued. Now you will answer unanimously. One by one. World by world. Until the debt is paid. Across the galaxy, the Concorde received this message and felt something they had not experienced in thousands of years. Fear. Real fear. The kind that kept you awake at night, wondering if tomorrow would be your last day. The Mercy Armada had conquered Earth in 3 days. Now the humans had freed themselves in less than 1. They had captured a critical relay station in hours. They were expanding outward at a pace that defied all logic. Emergency sessions were called. Delegates screamed at each other, demanding answers that no one had. How had this happened? How had a primitive species risen so quickly? What could they do to stop it? But deep down, many of them already knew the answer. There was nothing they could do. They had awakened something terrible, something that could not be put back to sleep. The humans were coming, and they remembered everything. In the months that followed, the Earth Liberation Fleet grew. Humans who had been scattered across Concorde space found ways to join the fight. Ships were captured and converted. Technology was adapted and improved. What had started as a desperate rebellion became an organized military force. And always, they followed the list. The 847 species that had voted for Earth's subjugation. One by one, they would face human justice. Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the stars pass by. She thought about her mother, who had died believing humanity would never be free. She thought about her father, who had given his life to build the weapons that made this moment possible. "We are coming," she whispered to no one in particular. "All of you, we are coming." The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity its place. Instead, humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The humans called it the Decade of Retribution. Alien historians would later use different names, words that translated to the Great Humbling or the Time of Tears. But whatever they called it, the meaning was the same. For 10 years, humanity worked through the list. They did not attack randomly. They did not destroy without purpose. Every action was calculated, every target chosen with care. The humans had studied the Concorde for 5 years during their occupation. They knew its weaknesses. They knew its divisions. They knew exactly where to strike. The Dominion hegemony fell first. Ambassador Keth Voran's species had proposed the subjugation of Earth. They had spoken the words that started everything. Now they would be the first to experience what they had created. Admiral Chen Wei-lin commanded the fleet that arrived at the hegemony homeworld. She was 60 years old, a veteran of the underground resistance who had lost her husband and 2 sons during the occupation. She had earned her rank through a decade of combat, and she had earned her reputation through victories that other commanders called impossible. The Dominion forces are requesting terms. Her communications officer reported. Chen Wei-lin looked at the view screen. The crystalline cities of the hegemony homeworld glittered below, beautiful and fragile. Millions of beings lived there, most of whom had never harmed a human in their lives. "Tell them we accept their surrender," she said. Unconditionally. The occupation of the hegemony homeworld was efficient. Human forces landed in precise formations. They secured government buildings, communication centers, and military installations. They established control quickly and without unnecessary violence. Then they implemented the integration program. It was the same program the Concorde had used on Earth. The same camps. The same lessons. The same message repeated over and over. Your old ways were wrong. Your violence was shameful. You must learn your new place in the galaxy. The irony was not lost on anyone. Ambassador Keth Voran, who had stood before the Concorde and called humanity dangerous, now sat in a small room and listened to human instructors explain why his species needed guidance. He who had proposed subjugation was now subjugated himself. "This is not justice," he said to his human guard one day. "This is revenge." The guard, a young woman who had been born in an integration camp on Earth, looked at him without sympathy. "When you did it to us, you called it mercy. We call it the same thing." One by one, the species that had voted fell. The Concorde fractured as old allies turned on each other, each trying to gain favor with the advancing humans. Some surrendered without fighting, hoping that cooperation would earn them better treatment. Others resisted fiercely and were crushed, but it was the Tressi Collective that showed the galaxy what human justice truly meant. The Tressi had proposed genocide. When the Concorde debated what to do about humanity, their representative had suggested simply destroying Earth and everyone on it. They had called it a clean solution to the human problem. Now the humans had come for them. Admiral Chen Wei-lin arrived at the Tressi homeworld with the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 3,000 ships surrounded the planet, more than enough firepower to crack the world open like an egg. The Tressi leadership had fled, abandoning their civilian population to face human wrath alone. Chun Wei-Lim looked at the planet below. Billions of Tressi lived there. Workers, farmers, children. Most had never even known about the vote. They were innocent of everything except being born into the wrong species. Her tactical officer stood beside her. "Admiral, we are in position. All weapons are ready. Awaiting your order." The bridge was silent. Everyone knew what the Dressi had proposed. Everyone knew what justice demanded. An eye for an eye. Genocide for genocide. Chun Wei-Lin thought about her sons. She thought about her husband. She thought about every human who had died because the Tressi had wanted a clean solution. Then she thought about something else. She thought about what it meant to be human. "Stand down all weapons," she said. Her tactical officer looked at her in shock. "Admiral, I said stand down. We will not fire on this planet." "But Admiral, they voted for our extinction. They wanted to kill us all." Chun Wei-Lin nodded slowly. "Yes, they did. And if we do the same, we become them. We prove that everything they said about us was right, that we are nothing but violence and destruction." She turned to face her crew. These were people who had lost everything. People who had every reason to want revenge. People who had waited years for this moment. "We are better than this," she said. "We've always been better than this. Our history is full of violence, yes, but it is also full of something else. Mercy, forgiveness, the ability to rise above our worst instincts. That is what makes us human. That is what they never understood." She broadcast a message to the planet below. "People of the Tressi Collective, your leaders have abandoned you. They wanted to destroy us, and now they have fled, leaving you to face us alone. But we are not them. We do not murder civilians for the crimes of their government." She paused. "We are occupying this world. You will live under human authority until we determine you are no longer a threat. But you will live. Your children will live. Your civilization will continue. This is not mercy because you deserve it. This is mercy because we choose it." The occupation of the Tressi homeworld was strict but fair. Essential services continued. No civilians were harmed. When the fleeing leaders were eventually captured by human intelligence agents, they were brought back to face trial. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, the species that had voted for Earth's subjugation saw human law in action. They saw evidence presented. They saw defendants allowed to speak. They saw judges who listened before deciding. And they saw guilty verdicts, followed by executions, but only for those who were guilty. Only for those who had made the decisions. Not for an entire species. Not for innocent civilians. Not for children. The galaxy watched and felt something new. Something more terrifying than any weapon humanity had deployed. They felt respect. The humans could destroy them all. They had the power, the motivation, and the moral justification. But they chose restraint. They chose justice over revenge. They chose to be better than their enemies. This was not what the Concord had expected. This was not what anyone had expected, and this was when the begging began. Delegations arrived at human space from dozens of worlds. They came with tribute and apologies. They came with their finest diplomats and their most sacred treasures. They came with fear in their hearts and prayers on their lips. They begged for mercy. They begged for forgiveness. They begged for a place in whatever order humanity was creating, because they understood now. The humans were not just conquerors. They were something far more dangerous. They were builders. And they were building something new. The Great Hall in Geneva had once been a place where human nations gathered to discuss peace. Now it served a different purpose. It was here that the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Director Amara Okonkwo stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by representatives of the United Human Council. She was 62 years old, her hair gray and her face lined with decades of struggle. She had been 7 when the Mercy Armada arrived. She had watched her parents die in an integration camp. She had fought in the underground resistance, commanded ships in the Liberation War, and helped plan the decade of retribution. Now she stood here, at the end of it all, facing the beings who had once ruled the galaxy. They came in delegations, hundreds of them, representatives of species that had voted so confidently to subjugate a primitive world. They came with gifts and apologies. They came on their knees. High Arbiter Yulsoma entered the chamber last. She was ancient, her tentacled body moving slowly, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with emotion she could not hide. She had been the architect of Earth's subjugation. She had spoken the words that started everything. Now she knelt before the species she had tried to control. "We beg forgiveness," she said. Her voice transmitted across the chamber and broadcast to every world in the former Concord. "We beg mercy. We beg for a place in whatever order you create." The chamber was silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Amara Okonkwo looked at the kneeling alien. She thought about her parents, about the camps, about the millions who had died under Concord rule. She thought about the years of fighting, the friends she had lost, the prices that had been paid. She thought about what humanity had become. "Rise, Arbiter," she said finally. "We do not require you to kneel." Yulsoma rose slowly, her spots pulsing with confusion. This was not what she had expected. She had prepared herself for humiliation, for demands, for the same treatment her people had given to humanity. She had not prepared for dignity. "You came to Earth 30 years ago," Amara continued. "You looked at our history and saw violence. You saw wars and weapons and suffering. You decided we were dangerous, that we needed to be controlled for our own good and for the safety of the galaxy." She paused, letting her words carry across the chamber. "You were not entirely wrong. We are violent. Our history is full of darkness. We have done terrible things to each other, things that no species should ever do. We do not deny this." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was not the speech they had expected. "But you made a mistake," Amara said. "A terrible mistake. You saw our violence, but you did not see what came after. You did not see how we rebuilt after every war. You did not see how we learned from our mistakes. You did not see how we forgave enemies who had done unspeakable things to us." She gestured to the humans around her. "Every person in this room has lost someone to your occupation. Every person has a reason to hate you. By any measure of justice, we would be right to do to you what you did to us. Or, worse." Yulsoma trembled. The other delegates held their breath. "But that is not who we are," Amara said. "That is not what we want. We did not fight for 30 years just to become new masters of the same broken system. We fought for something better." She stepped forward, closer to the kneeling delegates. "The Galactic Concord is dissolved. Its laws are void. Its trees are meaningless. The structure that allowed 847 species to vote for the subjugation of another is gone forever." A ripple of fear passed through the delegates. What would replace it? Chaos? Human dominance? Something worse? "In its place, we will build something new," Amara continued. "A confederation of worlds. Every species will have representation. Every species will have rights. Every species will have protections that cannot be voted away by a majority." She looked directly at Yulsoma. "You will be part of this confederation, not as subjects, not as conquered peoples, but as partners, equals, members of a community that values every life, regardless of species." The chamber erupted in murmurs. The delegates could not believe what they were hearing. After everything that had happened, after all the blood and tears, the humans were offering partnership? But there will be rules, Amara said, and her voice hardened. There will be no more votes to subjugate. There will be no more preemptive conquests. There will be no more integration camps, no more forced education, no more attempts to control other species for their own good. She raised her hand, and a hologram appeared showing the Confederation fleet. Thousands of ships, the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. This fleet will enforce these rules. It will be commanded by humans. Not because we are better than you, but because we have learned, through thousands of years of painful mistakes, what happens when power goes unchecked. We have the experience of both tyranny and liberation. We know the cost of both. She lowered her hand, and the hologram faded. You begged for mercy. Here it is. The chance to be better than you were. The chance to build something worthy of the stars. The chance to prove that the galaxy can move forward together. Not in fear, but in hope. She turned to face the full assembly, humans and aliens alike. This is not forgiveness. We cannot forget what was done to us. But it is a beginning. A chance for all of us to write a new chapter in galactic history. A chapter where no species is subjugated. Where no vote can take away another's freedom. Where mercy is not a word used to justify conquest, but a principle that guides everything we do. She extended her hand toward Yulsoma. Will you help us build this future, Arbiter? Will you stand with us not as our subject, but as our partner? Yulsoma looked at the extended hand. She thought about the thousands of years the Concord had existed. She thought about its laws, its traditions, its certainty that it knew best. She thought about how wrong they had been. Slowly, she reached out and touched Amara's hand. Yes, she said. We will stand with you. 100 years later, the Confederation archives on New Geneva contained a small exhibit that few tourists visited. It held the original voting record from the day the Concord decided to subjugate Earth. All 847 seals, preserved forever. Beside it stood a second display. The founding charter of the Human Confederation, signed by representatives of 1,247 species. More had joined over the decades. More were joining every year. A plaque beneath both displays reads simply, "They voted for subjugation. We voted for something else." Children of a dozen species walked past every day, barely noticing. To them, the old Concord was ancient history. They lived in a galaxy at peace, protected by a confederation that had not fought a major war in 60 years. They did not remember the fear. They did not remember the begging. But somewhere, in the deepest vaults of every alien government, the voting record was preserved. A reminder passed down through generations, never to be forgotten. The humans remembered. They always would. And that was why the galaxy was finally free.